James Carville knew how to win, and he blamed the Democratic losses this November 2nd on stupid wokeness, to which AOC fired back that wokeness is a term almost exclusively used by older people these days. So that should tell you all you need to know. What? This is a term folks like you brought out very recently and had been proudly displaying at every march since. Just last year, The Guardian declared woke the word of our era. I guess they didn't get the memo from the Mean Girls Club. We don't use that emoji anymore. Woke, please. We say fetch now.
Now here's Bill Maher calling out AOC for casually brushing off wokeism while steering America in the wrong direction. You'd think that after getting clobbered in the elections, the DNC would take the hint and pivot back toward the middle. But no. Instead, its biggest stars, especially AOC, seem determined to double down, charging full speed ahead with the same woke agenda that voters just rejected.
To have AOC on this show. There's so much to admire there. I was one of her first supporters for the Green New Deal idea. But that will probably never happen because Democrats don't go anywhere these days where they're not pre-adored. And that's my last bit of advice to them. Go where the amen corner isn't. Do Fox News. Be brave. Come here. Go everywhere. Winning is about expanding the electorate.
And Maher isn't letting up. In this video, he goes straight after AOC's latest woke claims, breaking them down piece by piece with his trademark bluntness. Buckle up, because this one gets intense fast.
What a great strategy, never missing an opportunity to remind voters how lame and clueless and hopelessly uncool they are, especially since those are the ones who actually vote. But okay, fine. What word would you like us to use for the plainly insane excesses of the left that are not liberalism, but something completely different? Because you can't have that word liberal from us and think it should cover things like canceling Lincoln and teaching third graders they're oppressors. That's all your new thing.
Now here's where it really gets interesting. AOC isn't actually afraid of woke ideology. She's afraid of being called woke. It's the political equivalent of saying, I believe in all of this, just don't label me with it in public. Even while trying to distance herself from the term, she remains unmistakably, perfectly woke. And that's exactly what Maher is calling out. He's not quibbling over wording. He's challenging the entire circle of self-described progressives who insist they're just modern liberals, even as their policies drift far from traditional liberal values. Maher's point is clear and cutting. Liberalism once stood for open debate, common sense, and actually listening to opposing views. Under figures like AOC, it's morphed into a hypermoral, ultra-sensitive crusade that barely resembles the principles it claims to defend.
A pertinent question to ask about the word woke might be, why in such a short time has it gone from a rallying cry to a pejorative? If the word only made you think of rational, deserved causes like teaching a less whitewashed version of American history, AOC would still want to own it. But it's a joke because it makes you think of people who wake up offended and take orders from Twitter, and their oversensitivity has grown tiresome.
Exactly. Figures like AOC and Bernie Sanders don't represent classic liberal values, the kind rooted in free speech, open debate, and practical problem solving. Ironically, they've also hijacked the original meaning of woke, which once meant being aware of real, tangible social injustices. Today, the term has been stretched to justify extreme ideas that most everyday Americans can't relate to. What began as awareness has turned into performance, where the goal isn't justice, but appeasing a small group perpetually offended by everything. Instead of focusing on policies that actually help working-class Americans, the movement obsesses over language policing, niche ideological battles, and purity tests no one asked for. Maher's point is simple and sharp. Modern woke politics has drifted far from genuine liberalism, and even farther from the concerns of real people.
All the time, Why haven't you ever had Hillary or Bill Clinton on? Why didn't you have Kamala on during the last campaign? You think we don't ask? We ask these people every week. They say no. It took 8 years and a petition to get Obama on. And these are people, all people I voted for. Think about that. They're afraid to come on the show of a guy who voted for them. The Republicans, they show up.
Anyone who's followed this channel knows this isn't Maher's first time challenging Democrats to come on his show. He's rolled out the red carpet, said direct invitations, and even called them out publicly. Yet they still refuse to appear. The reason is obvious. They know Maher won't pander or let rehearsed talking points slide unchecked. Yes, he's a Democrat, but he's also someone who values tough questions, honest debate, and calling out nonsense when he sees it. That alone makes him toxic to today's ultra-curated, hypersensitive political class. Sitting across from Maher means being pressed on inconsistencies, forced to defend contradictions, and risking your woke narrative getting dismantled live on national television. So they avoid him, because facing Maher means facing reality, and that's a conversation they're not ready to have.
People all the goodies Joe Manchin will allow. And it doesn't seem to buy their love. Why? Why is the party that supports so many issues that benefit the middle class still considered out of touch by 62% of Americans? In plain English, nobody likes a snob. Hillary Clinton didn't have anyone on rural research or outreach when she ran in 2016 until the race tightened just before the election. Then they hired one. And where was his office? Brooklyn. True story. Politics is local, not locally sourced. It's not artisan. It's art and Stan.
These days, the DNC seems far more invested in political theater than in solving the problems that keep everyday Americans up at night. Instead of addressing the concerns of average voters, they cater to the loudest voices on the far left, voices that don't actually represent most of their own base. Maher has tried to hammer home a simple political truth. Politics isn't a stage, it's local. It's about showing up for the people who elected you, listening to their struggles, and fixing the bread and butter issues that shape daily life. Yet that message keeps flying over the heads of figures like AOC, who appear more focused on ideological battles than practical governance. Maher's point is unmistakable. If Democrats want to regain trust, they need less performance art and more real problem solving. Right now, they're missing the mark.
Russian culture doesn't play in the Rust Belt. If a staffer hands you a speech that says menstruating people instead of women, don't say that. Say women. Don't put anyone fresh out of college in charge of the campaign. They've been given participation trophies their whole life. They don't know how to win.
Maher continues breaking down, point by point, the woke missteps that helped sink the DNC in the elections. And he doesn't pull any punches. He calls out how the party nearly erased the concept of womanhood, replacing a word that stood for centuries with awkward clinical phrases like menstruating people and birthing people, as if everyday Americans were expected to accept it without question. Then, there's the obsession with radicalized education culture. Instead of teaching resilience, standards, and real achievement, schools leaned into participation trophies, rewarding presence over effort and lowering expectations across the board. The message became simple: just show up and you're a winner. Maher argues that this mindset didn't stop at classrooms. It bled into politics, activism, and the workplace. He also points to hiring practices that prioritize checking demographic boxes over actual competence, pushing merit aside. Voters noticed. These weren't minor errors, Maher says. They were glaring examples of ideological overreach, and a major reason the DNC lost touch with reality and the people it claims to represent.
In America, you come across as the cares about everybody but me party. And it doesn't have to be that way. You can find ways to stand up for these folks without being David Duke. This month, when the Democrats finally passed their big $1 trillion bill to rebuild our roads and bridges, 6 Democrats voted no because it didn't go far enough to address climate change, which I'm sure is true. What does? But this was free money from the federal government that would actually improve their constituents' lives. I can see a voter saying, you know, squad, I agree with you on climate change. But as long as it is happening, we also need money for getting the water pumped out of the subway.
Today's Democrats often seem more invested in causes overseas than in the needs of people in their own neighborhoods. They rally passionately for Gaza, organize emotional campaigns for teens in Guatemala, and draft heartfelt petitions for communities halfway around the world. But when it comes to issues that directly affect American families, jobs, public safety, housing, and the rising cost of living, they hesitate, get lost in ideological debates, or fail to act at all. Maher points to a striking example: a major funding package rejected simply because it didn't include climate provisions. Instead of using that money to address urgent problems like crumbling infrastructure, overwhelmed cities, and struggling households, they walked away entirely. It sends a clear message: global symbolism takes priority, while domestic hardship can wait. Maher's point is sharp but reasonable. They could have accepted the funding, tackled immediate crisis, and then pushed climate measures separately. That's how practical politics works. Instead, ideological purity won out, and voters noticed.
Abortion, a difficult issue for the Democrats to lose on, but they're trying. For decades, liberals have said if only men could get pregnant, this wouldn't even be an issue. And abortion rights are women's rights. Well, that's wrong now. Or as the kids say, hold up. When the wokey end of the progressive spectrum talks about abortion now, they shy away from that word, women, and prefer terms like birthing people or people who menstruate, because somewhere there's a trans man who's pregnant, and I say good for him, and I'll be looking for his story somewhere in a future issue of Ripley's Believe It or Not.
The woke ideological wave arguably peaked when the far left began claiming that men could get pregnant, a statement so disconnected from basic biology that many people didn't know whether to laugh or be alarmed. To reinforce the idea, a pregnant man emoji was even introduced, as if a digital symbol could rewrite thousands of years of science. It was pure ideological theater. Unsurprisingly, the public reacted with confusion, disbelief, and plenty of skepticism. Reasonable questions followed, pointing out just how far the conversation had drifted from reality. But instead of engaging with those concerns, the far left responded with outrage. Anyone who questioned the claim, even calmly, was branded intolerant or hateful. Debate wasn't encouraged, compliance was. Dissent became unacceptable. At that point, it was clear this was no longer about inclusion or justice, but about enforcing ideology, leaving ordinary people struggling to keep up with ever-shifting rules of woke correctness.
85% Latino congressional district on the border with Mexico, which had always voted heavily Democratic, flipped to the red team. And the campaign manager for the losing Democrats said, "We gave up a reliably Democratic congressional seat for no reason at all. We deserve to know why." Well, aside from your terrible attitude, I'm going to tell you why. Because these voters stopped seeing your candidate as their lawyer. That's why. Their message to you was, I'm an American now. I'm here. Be my lawyer, not the lawyer for the migrants showing up in my backyard.
At its core, Maher's critique isn't just about AOC or woke language. It's about a Democratic Party consumed by performance politics and disconnected from everyday Americans. By prioritizing ideological purity, symbolic gestures, and fringe activism over real-world problems, the party ignored reality and silenced common sense. Voters noticed, and they walked away. If Democrats want to rebuild trust, they must stop policing language, abandon ideological extremes, and focus on the issues that actually affect people's lives. Until then, voices like Maher's will keep calling them out, and voters will keep delivering the same verdict at the ballot box.